Hello from the first A4Q Global Testing Summit, and a very warm welcome to everyone watching from all over the globe. I'm happy to welcome Anne Kramer as guest. The title of the presentation is Why Testers Need Their Own IDE and What They Should Expect. We are happy to have you here, Anne, and now I do not want to take too much of your time and hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear participants of the A4Q Global Testing Summit, welcome to this presentation, Why Testers Need Their Own IDE and What They Should Expect. My name is Anne Kramer, and I'm from Smart Testing. But before presenting the company and myself more in detail, I would like to apologize for not being on stage in Dublin. In fact, the testing summit seriously collides with another conference, and tomorrow at 10 I will be in Munich giving a keynote, and without a personal airplane it was simply not possible to attend both events in presence. Nevertheless, I'm probably here. I will listen to myself just as you do. Unfortunately, there's not the possibility to exchange questions in the chat. You may write into the chat or the comment fields, but I will only be able to read them afterwards. In the end of the presentation, there's my email, so please do not hesitate to contact me directly using email, or I will get informed also of your comments afterwards. Okay, I'm from Smart Testing, and maybe you think you know the company Smart Testing. Smart Testing is a tool provider having a model-based testing tool. You met them, let's say, 10 years ago. Well, this is not completely wrong, but it's no longer absolutely right either. Because in 2015, Smart Testing underwent a complete reorganization. The company is much smaller now. We are about 17 or 18 persons. And also the product portfolio has changed completely. Today, Smart Testing is developing what we call intelligent testing solutions, so software tools helping to do smart tests. For me, Smart Testing is a sort of hidden champion, and the proof that I honestly believe that is that after more than 20 years of being a process consultant, a trainer, a project manager, and in the end even a team lead at ZMed, finally, last year, I decided to quit and to join Smart Testing as a global customer success manager. This change has become effective only recently in April this year. Global stands for everywhere besides France, and customer success manager means that hopefully I may contribute to make your testing successful. Okay, who's successful? Well, we think the rich and beautiful are, and that's right, money and beauty helps a lot. But what is also very important from a psychological point of view is being self-confident and having self-esteem. And that's what my talk is about today. Why are testers so, well, let's say, masochists when it comes to their working environment? I mean, look at developers. Nobody would expect a developer to write source code using a simple text editor. In fact, any developer you ask to do so would quit after 2 days. Developers have their own integrated development environment, their IDE for writing, building, and debugging code. They use code analyzers and unit testing tool. They automate as many repetitive, stupid tasks as possible. Testers don't. Somehow, testers are more willing to suffer and to accept the lack of tool support. We are already happy to work with an application lifecycle management tool where we can link test cases to requirements or user stories. That makes traceability much easier for us. Also, we have a dedicated field for steps and expected result and actual result, but we do not really have tools helping us to think about tests, to design and create test cases. Sometimes we do not even have the comfort of an ALM tool, and the only IDE many testers out there still have is a well-known application suite from a company located in Redmond. I mean, Word and Excel. So if we stay within the figure of a summit, thinking of a mountain summit, then you could say developers have mountain boots and other equipment. Testers are maybe not barefooted, but they have sneakers. Why is it so? Why are we so masochist? Do we really lack self-esteem? Well, at least we have our own testing manifesto, the Agile testing manifesto. This was postulated in 2015 by Sam Lang and Karen Greaves in their book, Growing Agile. It is one out of several versions of an Agile testing manifesto, and it postulates 5 values, which are ranked higher than 5 other values, which are testing thorough over testing at the end, preventing bugs over finding bugs, testing understanding over checking functionality, building the best system over breaking the system, and last but not least, team responsibility for quality over tester responsibility. So even if the Agile testing manifesto is not that well known as the Agile manifesto from 2001, at least it exists, and it is a good step towards equity regarding to developers. But we need more. We need our own IDE. So, oh, sorry. What is an IDE? Well, let's ask Wikipedia. Wikipedia says an integrated development environment is a software application that provides comprehensive facilities to computer programmers for software development. So comprehensive, we have all we need. An IDE normally consists of at least a source code editor, build automation tools, and a debugger. So that's what developers have and what they can expect. They have support for editing, debugging, and automation. For example, if we look more in detail, editing means there's some syntax highlighting. If you write source code for a specific or in a specific programming language, then the keywords of the programming language, they are somehow highlighted in bold blue, for example. And you have auto-completion of text blocks, for example, of variable names, which is very helpful because it avoids, it helps you avoiding typos, and typos in source code are bugs. There are usually some drag and drop features. You have an easy to use editor and maybe even a graphical editor, especially in the case of model-driven development. When I was younger, Java Beans and drag and drop of Java Beans was very popular, but there are similar features today. And of course, we have traceability features and configuration management. Configuration management is also very important. I put it amidst the editing features because, well, the outcome of editing is one very important configuration element. So developers can have a look who did which change, entered which check-in command, have diff tools to compare the older version with the newer one, etc. For debugging, we have syntax checks. The compiler gives us warnings in case of inconsistencies. This variable has been used before it was declared or initialized. If you go further, you have static code analysis tools, vulnerability scanners for security testing, and so on. So there are a lot of tools. In automation, well, in the best of all automation worlds, you have a continuous pipeline from the check-in until deployment. At least you have a build pipeline. Everything is done automatically. You also have tools for generation of code. once again, the example of model-driven development or data generators. Developers, as they can develop, they tend also to develop their own tools to make life easier for them. And last but not least, speaking of unit tests, they have automated test execution. That's what developers have. And testers? Well, that looks not that well. Testers have also some editing help. They can have syntax highlighting, as I will show in a moment, but usually they have a standard editor. If they use an application lifecycle management tool, they have traceability, and they also have configuration management. But when it comes to debugging, well, correct me if I'm wrong, write me an email afterwards. But in most cases, I would say the best we have is a spell check. And automation is even blank. There is, I'm not speaking of unit tests, by the way. I'm speaking rather of system tests, integration, system tests, acceptance tests of the top of the Agile testing pyramid. Because unit tests or component tests, for me, that's part of the developer's framework, at least. Yeah, for testers, currently, I would say it's more like a desert. But that should not be the case. We should have our own IDE. We should expect the same tools as and support as testers have. For editing, we want to have syntax highlighting. We want to have auto-completion of text blocks, drag and drop facilities. We also want an easy-to-use editor, traceability, configuration management. I mean, our time is just as precious as the developer's time. For debugging, we need syntax checks. We want to have warnings in case of inconsistencies. And we need something which is even more crucial for testing and for developing, which is the propagation of changes. Because when you think of developing of code, well, good developers avoid redundancies. When they have several times the same function, they make it a function, and the other functions will only call this function. Whereas in testing, we have quite a lot of copy paste. Think of the test cases. They all start with open the application, go to menu XYZ, do something, and then testing starts. And this first block is the same in many test cases. So when it changes, we have to do the change in a lot of test cases. And once again, the best propagation of change we currently have in most cases is find replace. But find replace is also very error prone. It's case sensitive, possibly typos will not be detected, and so on. So especially if you don't have auto-completion of text, then you tend to have typos, or you have written it differently one day and the other day. So the same action is described differently and will not be detected by the find replace. So this is a problem. And in automation, we want to have test case generation. We want to have test data generation. And of course, especially if we work with an application lifecycle management tool and or a test automation framework, we need some automated transfer from one to the other just as developers have with their build pipeline. Okay, now solutions exist. But it's not that much the desert as I suggested in the figure before. There are solutions, but the problem is it's not an IDE. We have some testers have tools doing this, other testers have tools doing that, and we do not really have this, even not this thinking of we all need this all in an integrated development environment. So, for example, I will give some examples now for syntax highlighting. Of course, if you work with a behavior-driven development and you use the Gherkin syntax given when then in the editor, those keywords given when then will be highlighted. I mean, even Notepad++ can do that. it's a screenshot from Notepad++, showing this syntax highlighting. Also, if you work with an ALM tool and or another test management tool, and it allows parameterization of the test steps, then of course the parameters are somehow highlighted so that you are able to distinguish the plain text from the parameter. So solutions exist here. Same as for completion, auto-completion of text. Once again, even Notepad++ can do that. When I type it some text and I've activated the feature, then Notepad++ will propose me some auto-completion. So we should be able to expect this, but it can be more or less comfortable. For example, if you have auto-completion of both the test step and the expected result, then that's better than just having the word you want to type. Drag and drop facilities exist. Some ALM tools allow drag and drop for traceability. So, for example, I know about Codebeamer, where it is possible to create traceability using drag and drop. Speaking of traceability, most application lifecycle management tools allows you to type some text of the requirement, and then you will get a selection, a filter of the selection, and then it is easier to link the test cases. Then the Razorcat classification tree editor, for example, has a graphical editor with some drag and drop features. So there are tools allowing that. Then, speaking of editor, well, there are a lot of developers, and this causes the tool providers for developers to think that usability is important. There are also a lot of testers, but as I said, testers are more willing to suffer, so usability seems to be less important, but it shouldn't. Usability isn't a very important aspect. And especially when I think of graphical editors, where you want to illustrate something like the testing scenario, then I would say that tools like Draw.io or virtual boards like Miro have set new standards which are not necessarily met by all the older UML modeling tools. So for example, when I select an element, then there are arrows appearing to the four sides of this element, and when you take this arrow and you drop it somewhere on the canvas, then the tool proposes you to create a new element, and you can select which element you want to have. So this is nice, and this is really easy to draw models or scenarios, workflows, flowcharts using tools like that. But this is only one aspect of easy to use. Also, when you think of linking the manual tests to automated test cases, when you want to automate those tests you first specified for manual test execution, then I highly recommend a keyword-driven approach. So the step for the manual tester is in fact mapped on a keyword, and the keyword represents the function the test automation engineer has implemented. And somehow you have to make this mapping. This can also be more or less easy. You can have complex mapping tables in Excel, or you can have tool support where you select from a list of keywords which keyword you want to have, and then you set the arguments. So what I'm trying to say here is stop being masochist. You can expect good usability in the test case editor. Next thing is configuration management. Configuration management in the past has also often been a problem, especially with modeling tools, because it is not so easy to say when a model has changed, what is really the change and where to how to show it. Well, the tool providers of modeling tools have all somehow addressed or tried to address this problem. In this specific case, where the screenshot is taken from, you have a link to a Git, and the model, the visual representation is in fact put into the Git, and you can commit and push and pull from the server, and you also have the possibility to see what has changed from the last time, or to compare projects. If you stay still with this application suite from Microsoft, then you have, at least in Word, you have change bars. And even if I'm really saying that Word is not a good test case editor, but change bars are quite valuable because you can see what has changed. So far for editing. When we look at debugging, well, in a modeling tool, we have usually some sort of syntax check, so that when you ask the tool whether the workflow is healthy, whether there are no open ends, for example, whether it has a start and an end, then you get this information. So with syntax checks, I would say exist, but once again, they are in your drawing tool. They are not in the tool where you write the test cases in. What we need is, in fact, something like similar to what the developers have. I mean, the developers, even just with the compiler tells them when they declared a variable, but they never used it. And if you think of testers declare, in a sense, or they think of equivalence classes or equivalence partitions. So we have an idea of the equivalence partitions that exist and that we would like to test. And now it would be nice to have a tool telling us, well, okay, you declared this equivalence partition, but you never used it in a test case. So it's not covered. This is a very important information, making our test cases better because coverage is higher. And you can even think further. You want to see whether you have test cases where there are still no test steps in, or if you have problems with linking to test automation, or not yet planned the test case. Well, test management tools do that, but the empty test cases are I do not know all the tools. So I'm quite sure now there are people in the audience saying, well, we have that. Yes, of course. We, as I said, isolated, you have those solutions. But what we should do is putting them together into an IDE. I talked about propagation of changes. So when I do a change, then I want to have it propagated in all the test cases that are affected by the change. And here can we come to the clearly come to the classical model-based testing, where the idea is that you draw a workflow, and each element in the workflow has some test actions and expected results associated. And when you generate that, you can generate the test cases, and then when you change something in the diagram, then it will the changes will be automatically propagated into the generated test cases once you generate again. But you could also think of having it propagated into the already generated test cases. Which brings me to the next and last part for automation. Once again, model-based testing. This is the idea of model-based testing, generating test scenarios from visual or even textual models. But we could also have test data generators. Here, once again, tools exist. Okay, I will stop my examples here. Well, of course, I think smart testing has a good solution for that. You may imagine that most of the screenshots we're taking from one tool, which is in fact the tool Yes. If I want to go further, I have to do a demo, but this is not the topic of this today's talk. I'm talking about the IDE and about making testers more self-confident, asking for more support. Of course, if you are interested, I would be glad if you contact me and I can give you a demo. But here I would like to go back to the Agile testing manifesto and thinking once again about what this manifesto means for testers and what it means for our working environment. Let's go through the 5 values. We have first value was testing thorough. What means testing thorough? Well, testing thorough, in my opinion, means that you have a good coverage of equivalence partitions, but also good coverage of workflows. For example, if you are testing end-to-end tests. So what we need in our IDE is really some highlighting, some warning of inconsistencies in the sense that our coverage is not as good as it could be. That we did not cover some path of the workflow, or that we did not cover some decisions in a decision table, or some equivalence classes we previously declared. So, preventing bugs means testing early. For me, that preventing bugs and shift left testing is synonym. Testing early brings us to agile approaches like test-driven development. And as we talk about acceptance tests, we think of acceptance test-driven development. So if we use an acceptance test-driven development approach, then I think this is a good step in preventing bugs. Testing understanding means we have to establish understanding. And even if agile approaches speak a lot about collaboration of the 3 amigos of developers, product owner, and testers, even if agile has really communication as one of the most important values, still we encounter in practice, we encounter the situation that the product owner has his or her idea in mind, and that it is not so transparent for the developers, and especially not to testers, what is exactly what is wanted. Behavior-driven development tries to fix this problem because it's specification by example. But the problem with BDD is that it is limited its scope. BDD works very well when you think about isolated user stories. But this given when then syntax is not really useful, or it is not appropriate for testing long workflows, where in fact you have a given, then you want to check something, so you have when then, but then this is given, and you want to check something else, and then you want to check something else. What you need is a given when then suite, and this is not supported by BDD. So what you need is in fact some overview, and visual scenarios provide you with this overview. So your IDE should allow visualizing test scenarios, and your IDE should also allow to share those visualizations and all the information behind with both the product owner and the developers, and maybe other stakeholders of the project. Building the best system is well, building the best system makes me think of refactoring. That's what developers think when they say we want to do the best work, at least in Agile. They are regularly refactoring, and we should also, first of all, we should be able to refactor our tests, and second, we should also be able to retest what the developers did. So regression testing becomes important when you talk about building the best system, especially in an agile approach where the information, what is best, is getting clearer from sprint to sprint. So we need some link to test automation. And once again, I say keyword-driven testing is, for me, the best way to link manual tests to test automation. And last but not least, we have this value team responsibility for quality. It was over tester responsibility. So quality is in fact a team's task. Of course, it's an agile value from the beginning, but once again, in practice, you somehow get the, or sometimes get the impression that testing is still the tester's task, but the testers are not there to do stupid repetitive tasks. Testers are there to add value in building the best system, in providing or making sure everybody has the same understanding, in preventing bugs. You see, I'm going back to the left of the values. That's what testers are. They are somehow the ambassador of quality, and they should understand themselves also like that. And everybody should understand it. So sharing the knowledge and making the work of testers transparent and getting rid of stupid repetitive tasks like re-executing manual tests or doing find replace in test cases makes it the work of testers much more valuable, and hopefully also the perception of testers better. So we have more self-esteem and more self-confidence, which makes us successful. Okay, that was my message, in fact. This is my last slide, or nearly last slide, the only really publicity slide showing the tools. The screenshots are mainly taken from the tool to the left. They're called YEST, which is a visual acceptance test-driven development tool. There's also an add-on for Jira, making it possible to share the testing scenarios in Jira. So this is the collaborative part. And well, I forgot to present in the beginning. There's another tool which is in development, which is Gravity, a tool that uses artificial intelligence or machine learning for extracting information from test automation, from test execution logs to create senseful, smart regression tests. Okay, if you want to know more about that, please do not hesitate to call me, to write me an email. You have my phone number. You have my my email here. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah. Anyway, it's not very difficult to guess. It's ann.kramer@smarttesting.com. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. That was a very great presentation, and thank you also for giving the option to the audience to and yeah, thank you very much for being there and being a part of the Global Testing Summit.